Hey guys, it's Will from EDM Tips, and this week I'm going to show you how to make some really lush, future-based, flumey chords that sound something like this. And I'm going to show you how to do it just with the plugins that come with Ableton Live. You can download the patch below for free and any other free gifts I've given there. Thanks for subscribing. Let's hop into Ableton Live. Basically, there are going to be 5 stages to this tutorial. One is building the chords and the bass, so that's the music theory. Second is the sound design, so actually building the synth. The third is building the effects, and fourth is adding some sidechain, and then fifth is automation. So we're going to go all through those in order. So number 1. This is my project. There's no bass sound loaded, nothing in there, but I have made some drums. This is the drum loop. Okay, and that is just a future-based drum loop that I made with separate samples loaded into Simpler in Ableton Live, okay? But that's not what this is about, this tutorial, so let's crack on to the chords. Right, first things first, we load up a very simple operator patch because we're doing this all with native synths. We're going to call that Flume synth. You can download this patch that I made below, but first thing is first. Right, let's have a listen to that. It's just a sine wave, but to get that really lush, thick, flumey sound, we want to pick a saw synth. It's a much harsher sound with lots more harmonics. Right, building the chords. Now I'm going to do this in the key of C major. Now if you've seen any of my other videos on building chords, you'll know what I'm doing, but basically we are going to put the bass notes in first. And then once we've got our bass notes, which is a first and a fifth, and a third and a second in the key of C major, we're going to build the chords above that by counting up the intervals, and we're just going to be using triads at first. So you just miss one note to get to the third, and then you miss another note in the scale to get to the fifth. So that's our third, because these black notes aren't in the key of C major. So we got that note, skip one, that's the third, skip the fourth, and then hit the fifth. So that's the chord of C major. Anyway, check out my other videos or my music theory for EDM producers. You can get that below as well. But I'll just do that with the other chords. So we've got a major, a minor, and then a major at the end as well. And that is our chord sequence, the basics of it. Right, and now we're going to get that really thick, lush, flumey sound by adding some 7th chords to this. So first, I'm going to copy those bass notes and drop them down an octave. So we've got discernible bass sound. There, just an octave below. And now I'm going to add the 7th chords by counting up to the 7th in the scale. So we've got C as the first, E as the third, G as the fifth, so B is the 7th. And now let's listen to that chord. Lush. But I'm going to drop that root note of the chord down to B as well, which is called an inversion. I'm just changing the order of the notes in the chord. They're the same notes, just changing the order. Now let's listen to it. Too lush. Add the 7th there. I'm going to drop down the root note to also match that 7th. Now let's listen to these two chords. And I shall continue really quickly, do that for the last two chords. Yes, so I've also suspended this last chord. I've split it in half and suspended the first half just to add tension. So listen to this last chord. So here are our basic chords now. Okay, and the next stage is sound design. So we're going to get this synth sounding how we like it. And the first thing I'm going to do is copy the bass notes, delete them, stick them into a separate instrument, which is going to be the bass. And we're just going to load up an operator patch in there and make it a simple sine wave. But we're going to select all those notes, press Shift and down in Ableton Live. So with our chords, they sound like... Lovely. Okay, so sound design on the chords. Let's turn off the bass for a minute. And there are a few things to think about. First, we want this really lush, rich sound. And what we're going to do for that is use the spread feature in Operator. We'll turn the drums off too. And what that does is basically duplicate the saw wave and detune it slightly. So that means kind of making the different saw waves slightly out of tune, and it creates this rich, thick stereo sound. And we're also going to be playing with the pitch as well to give it more interest, because it's really important in future bass tracks because they're quite slow. It's all about the interest, keeping the interest, what's going on. So there's lots of movement in all the sounds and all the composition. So we are going to add some, you can hear that's quite a lot of pitch bend. We don't want that, but we will just have a lower amount. And it just gives it more of an organic feel. Okay, the next thing to do is let's give a bit of a pitch envelope, which means that at the beginning of the track, we've got this envelope here. Sorry, at the beginning of the sound, we've got this envelope here. And we can basically make the pitch bend into the chord. See what I mean? And obviously if we make a longer decay, it takes longer to get to the actual note we've programmed in. But that's too much. And we can actually turn glide on as well, which means that when it goes from one chord to the next, the notes actually glide into the next notes. So we've already got a much more interesting sound. And now what we're going to do is, well, what I did earlier was I made an aux channel in Ableton Live and put a reverb on it, just a simple reverb. And now I can add reverb to these chord sounds using this send knob here. Now with the bass. So I might even turn off the pitch envelope and just keep the glide on. You can experiment a bit, of course. Okay, stage 3 is add the effects. We've already done that. Stage 4. Okay, now we're going to add some sidechain to make it gel in with that rhythm nicely. And what sidechain compression is when a compressor, which controls the dynamics of a sound, is triggered by an external sound. So on the chords, I'll just load up a standard compressor in Ableton. open this, press Sidechain, and the audio input I'm going to send from the kicks. So that means that the signal from the kick, the boosh, doo doosh, is going to end up ducking out the volume on these chords, which can give it a really interesting sound. So I'll show you what I mean. I'll turn off the bass. In fact, I'll turn off the drums and just keep the kicks going. So you can see here, that is where the kick is ducking out the synth. Now let's add those drums back in. And the bass. In fact, I'm going to add a sidechain compressor exactly the same to the bass as well. Okay, and the last stage is automating. So that basically means drawing in changes to the chords, and we can use an auto filter, just putting this over the chords, and we're going to use a low pass filter. Let's stick it there. So let's listen to this now. I'll put it before the compressor actually. And you can either draw in automation in Ableton Live or whichever DAW you're using, or you can use the LFO here, which is a low frequency oscillator, to control the frequency. You can hear it's clipping a bit because I've got the resonance up quite high. So what I might do is either tweak that down or just take the volume down to stop it clipping. And that's basically how you can make some really lush, thick, flumey, future bassy, chordy goodness just with the plugins that you get within Ableton Live. Now, FL Studio has very similar plugins as well. You don't need all the expensive synths. If you can get these fundamentals down, when you move on to those premium synths, it's going to be a freaking mind grenade. Thanks for subscribing. You can download the free stuff here and get the patch as well. And I'll see you next time. Cheers, guys, and happy producing.